Say what?
Cut! No, man. You're making me fall asleep. To death, bro. Okay, the line is... Say what?
All right, guys. So, same old guy again. This is the video I showed you about him saying schools basically don't teach you something, makes you dumber. Anyway, so he's starting on gravity, guys. So gravity, he's trying to say is just buoyancy, density and buoyancy, okay? First of all, density wouldn't explain why something falls, okay? And it damn sure wouldn't explain why it accelerates. Anytime we drop something, for instance, like this, look. Not only does it fall to the ground, but it accelerates while it does. In other words, the longer it falls, the faster it goes until it reaches terminal velocity. So, flat earthers like to spout and point to Felix Baumgartner, the Red Bull guy that jumped from the stratosphere, how he actually slowed down when he was falling. Well, he actually did slow down. The reason he slowed down is because he reached terminal velocity. So in other words, he went as fast as he could go while he was falling. While he was falling at that max speed, his body was hitting denser and denser air because we have a pressure gradient in our atmosphere. Where it gets thinner and thinner the higher you go up. If anybody's ever done mountain climbing, they know when you get to the top of the mountain, if you can breathe, the air is very thin. Which flat earthers like to spout off the second law of thermodynamics, which actually has nothing to do with this matter. That has to do with the conservation and transfer of energy. However, so with his body, the mass of his body hitting denser and denser air as it was falling, he actually did slow down a little bit. Wasn't much, just a little bit. But anyway, density wouldn't explain why things fall at the same rate. In other words, I can take two objects that are one's bigger than the other, one's denser than the other, and they'll drop at the same rate. As long as they are shaped the same and they have the same air resistance, they will fall at the same rate. Okay. This is because the gravity has an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared. Okay, roughly, depending on where you're at on the Earth. They like to spout off the gravitational theory. Listen, theory is not. The word theory isn't the same when it has the word scientific in front of it. When it says scientific theory, that means it's got tons of evidence behind it. It's been tested and proven. It's a fact. It's basically a fact, but it leaves room for interpretation. Okay, or better explanation. For instance, Newton's theory of gravity. Newton's gravity explained what we saw. In other words, he saw an apple fall from a tree, and that's what started him on the whole gravity kick. Einstein's gravity, okay, is the why of that. Newton didn't understand why why the objects fell at the rate that they fell. He just knew that they fell at the same rate and they accelerated. So in order for something to accelerate, it has to have a vector. Okay. Density is a scalar. It's not a vector, or it doesn't have a vector. So therefore, density is not the answer. If density was the answer, things that were more dense would fall faster than things that were less dense than that object, and they just don't. The basic law of everything is everything takes the path of least resistance. Okay, so if, for instance, density was the reason why things just fell to the ground because it's denser than air around it, why would it fall down, you guys? How come when I drop this, okay, if the air below it is denser and thicker and harder to go through, why would it fall through that denser? You see what I mean? Even if this was denser than the air around it, why would it fall down instead of going up where there was the least amount of resistance on that object? Because things take the path of least resistance. That's a fact. That's an observable, verifiable, reproducible fact. So, and buoyancy, I'm not even going to get into buoyancy. You can't even do the formula for buoyancy without including gravity. So they're just idiots, man. This is a common theme with flat earthers. They like to say density and buoyancy, and they don't even understand either one. But that's the basic rundown of that. So there you go, Hans. That totally smashes what you have to say about density and buoyancy. So, hope you have fun with that. Let me see what you got to say to it. Now, let's watch this video.
Hans Wormhat. So this is a quick video on how school is there to make you dumb. It's not there to actually teach you truth about the world. It's there to teach you false things about the world, things that take you away from God. And it's there to teach you ridiculous things and get you to eventually believe them just by bashing it into you enough. You'll eventually believe it because everybody around you believes it, and it keeps being shouted at you over and over again. So you eventually just lose that good instinct, your God-given instincts. So the example I'm going to do in this video is gravity. Gravity doesn't exist. Gravity is the made-up idea that matter or mass attracts mass. Have you ever seen mass attract mass? Have you ever seen something like stick to the side of an elephant? Or no, I've never observed mass attract mass ever. And they get you to believe gravity just through lying to you. They just lie. And what they tell you is, the reason things fall is because gravity. That's what they tell you. And I remember, children have great instincts, better than adults. Children are more observant than adults, big time. Having children, you'll notice how observant they are. You can have a giant mess of a child's room, and if you go in there and move one of their things or you take away one of their things, they'll know right away. Children are super observant, way more so than your, average asleep person. And so the very first time, I'll just tell about the time that I was told about gravity the very first time. They tell you the whole apple falling on a tree. And of course, that's a shout out to the Garden of Eden, apple. It's, Eve eating the apple off the tree. And so they tell you the story about how the apple falls because of gravity. That doesn't make any sense. What? So it's just density and buoyancy. And it's always simple. They overcomplicate the simple. The truth is simple and it makes sense. Here's the truth. Objects go down unless they're stopped by another object. That's the truth. There's an orientation to this place, to Earth. God made the earth. There's an up and a down. Heaven is up. Down is us, below heaven. So the way that this place works, unless there's another force active, objects go down unless they're stopped by something. And that's just the way this place works. So an apple falls, and it's just intuitive too. It's the answer that makes sense. Why does an apple fall? An apple falls because it's no longer supported by the tree, right? Whatever that connection is between the tree and the apple, it eventually breaks. Well, now you have an apple which is more dense than the air surrounding it, and nothing is stopping the apple from falling, so it's going to fall. That's how the world works. It's how we've always seen the world work, ever since day one. Gravity is the insane idea that, the reason that the apple falls is because the mass of the earth is so heavy, there's so much mass of the earth that it's somehow magically, it's magic. That's what it is. Whereas people who understand that God made this place, we can say it's the way God made it, right? That's the reason that an apple falls the way that it does, is because that's the way God made it. And buoyancy and density are just they're, that's real physics. Gravity is fake physics. It's BS. And what they basically do, they brainwash you and get you to think, your average sheep person, they think that the fact that objects fall, they think that that's gravity. So when you tell them things like, I don't believe in gravity, they're like, what? How do you not believe in gravity? They'll like drop something, or they'll jump up in the air and fall down, and you'll have to be like, okay, you didn't just prove anything. You just proved that density and buoyancy are a thing. You're more dense than the air, so what do you expect is going to happen? Proof against gravity, I'll just really quickly, some really good proofs against gravity. They'll even tell you that it's the weakest force out there, which is kind of, they're mocking the fact that it doesn't even exist. So gravity is just it doesn't exist. You can just see that it doesn't exist. Think of a balloon. So a rubber balloon, it's heavy before you put helium in it, right? You have a heavy balloon. So somebody who believes in gravity, they think that the reason that you have a heavy balloon, and if you just drop it, it falls to the ground, they think the reason it falls to the ground is gravity, okay? The second you put some helium in that balloon to the point where it's less buoyant than air, that balloon shoots up into the sky so fast. What happened to gravity? Where'd gravity go? Well, the thing is that gravity never existed to begin with. That's why the buoyant force, it's the only force that's at play here. The reason a balloon, an empty balloon falls is because of buoyancy. The reason that a full balloon goes up is because buoyancy. It's the same thing. But they just lie to you and they get you to believe in a fairy tale. All right, and I guess in this one I can just say another thing it's obviously fake when they tell you about it, is the Egyptian pyramids. They try to tell you that like 1 million slaves were sitting there chiseling away with copper at these little stones and that's just all made up. The Egyptian pyramids are just pretty modern, and it's just concrete. You can go look at it. All right, God bless everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video.
Right.
Hans Wormhat. In this video, I want to explain how the phases of the moon work. Not exactly how it works, because I don't think anybody knows. I think that's how the heavens and all of this works. I think that's going to be part of the truths that get revealed. All truth shall be revealed. We'll eventually know that stuff. But I don't think it's something that anyone really has figured out. Just because somebody in a lab coat and somebody with 10 PhDs allegedly tells you that they know, that doesn't mean anything. It's a bunch of bullshit, and you really do live in a big lie, and there really are that many people that are willing to get together and lie to people to hide God. And one of the ways that they do that is the NASA Outer Space Fantasyland, and you got to break out of it. It never felt right to me. Things like gravity, when people would explain them, like, that doesn't make sense. An apple just falls because it's not supported by the tree anymore, and it's more dense than air. And yeah, gravity's fake. It's just density and buoyancy, and so much more. But that's not what this video is about. I just want to teach something practical, something useful, something they don't teach in school, because they don't want you out there looking at the sun and moon and stars and actually figuring out about it. They want to fill your mind with a bunch of NASA garbage factoids.
All right, Hans. First of all, the shape of the Earth and outer space and all that isn't taught to us by NASA. NASA's just the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. They go to space, man. They send rockets to space, man. They don't teach us shit. Now, granted, if they learn something, we learn it too. I love how you flat towards talk about NASA and how bad and evil NASA is, and you make up lies about it. Say NASA means to deceive when it doesn't in Hebrew, and when it doesn't in Hebrew, NASA, the closest thing to NASA means to lift up, not to deceive. That's another lie you guys made up. it's just something a flat earther lied about, made up, and all of you ran with it because you don't know how to do your own research. So, anyways, NASA doesn't mean to deceive. NASA doesn't teach us. Scientists teach us. Teachers teach us. And that's about that.
Hans Wormhat. In this video, I want to explain how the phases of the moon work. Not exactly how it works, because I don't think anybody knows. I think that's how the heavens and all of this works. I think that's going to be part of the truths that get revealed. All truth shall be revealed. We'll eventually know that stuff. But I don't think it's something that anyone really has figured out. Just because somebody in a lab coat and somebody with 10 PhDs allegedly tells you that they know, that doesn't mean anything. It's a bunch of bullshit. And you really do live in a big lie. And there really are that many people that are willing to get together and lie to people to hide God. And one of the ways that they do that is the NASA Outer Space Fantasyland. And you got to break out of it. It never felt right to me. Things like gravity, when people would explain them, like, that doesn't make sense. An apple just falls because it's not supported by the tree anymore, and it's more dense than air. And yeah, gravity's fake. It's just density and buoyancy, and so much more. But that's not what this video is about. I just want to teach something practical, something useful, something they don't teach in school, because they don't want you out there looking at the sun and moon and stars and actually figuring out about it. They want to fill your mind with a bunch of NASA garbage factoids with coded numbers and just huge numbers that don't exist in reality, just to have you living in a fantasy land. They want you seeing a spinning cartoon ball image or fisheye lens footage or just a bunch of cartoons, really bad ones. They want you seeing that more than reality, more than real life. They don't want you looking at the moon and really thinking about it and making your own observations. They just want you to sit back and, I don't know, even people who study the moon, they don't study practical stuff. I've taken many astronomy courses. Nobody ever taught what this video is about. So let's get into it. There's two major things you need to know. Full moon is opposite the sun in the sky, and the full moon rises after the sun sets. Think of how full the moon is a representation of how far apart the moon and the sun are in the sky. And people have brought this up. The moon is a reflection of the sun. That might be true. It very could be true that the moon is like the back side of the sun, and it's...
Say what?
Seriously. The moon is the backside of the sun. Really? So, how are we seeing the moon then when the sun and the moon are in the sky together? Let me guess. A reflection off the dome, right? Yeah, sure. I think somebody's been smoking the wacky tobacco and maybe a little PCP, because that's just fucking stupid. That is seriously, literally the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard. This guy is a total idiot. He says that they don't want us going out and looking at the sun and the moon. Then why is there shit called earth science? I don't know, astronomy, all kinds of things. Science. How about that? Just in general, science. You know. But they're wanting to hide that from us so bad. That's why they have a whole course based around space, the universe, and all of that. But they want to hide it. Them are probably courses for them government paid shills. Ain't it?
And it's some sort of reflection. The sun is hot, the moon is cold. God is amazing. The heavens are amazing. We're all it's gonna blow our mind when we figure out the truth. And it's gonna be so much cooler and better, because it'll be true, than NASA Outer Space Fantasyland, which never felt right. Anyways, the full moon is opposite the sun in the sky. The full moon rises after the sun sets. Yeah, and think of full moon because it's as far away as it can be. And that means as it gets closer, it's going to not be full anymore. And that's how the phases work. That's how the moon gets smaller or bigger, or, you know, more lit or less lit. It's a light in the sky. Okay, the next part. The moon travels more slowly than the sun. Or you can think of this the other way. The sun travels faster than the moon. And I think that this is where all of those folk tales, which this is a big aha moment when you wake up, they've been hiding the truth in plain sight the whole time. We've always had the Bible there, and the Bible's flat earth, but all of the folk tales that they tell us, they try to make it seem like a passe thing. Oh, people used to believe that the earth was flat. Oh, Native American tales about the sun eating the moon.
Right.
So, first of all, yep, the sun is hot, but the moon is not hot. That's not funny. So, anyway, the moon is not hot, cold. The moon is, there's been tests that the moon is not cold. Dude's a freaking idiot. This guy is ignorant. So you think this guy thinks that the phases of the moon are when it's farthest away, the moon is full. And as it gets closer is how we get the phases of the moon. What? What the fuck does that mean? So the moon does travel faster than the sun in an orbital fashion, because the sun don't move in an orbit except around the center of the earth. Us and the moon move around the sun and through the universe with the solar system. And then, of course, the moon orbits the earth. But this dude's an idiot. At the end of this, Hans, I'm going to show you an all-day observation of the sun. It does not change in angular size. It does not grow bigger or smaller like it would if it was a close sun that gets closer to you as the day gets further along and farther away as the day goes into night. If that was the case, the sun's angular size would change dramatically. I can show you at the end of this video, little boy, a video that's going to crush your whole world. So be ready.
Up to the moon, it's like eating away at the moon. The moon gets less and less and less. But it's like on a circular track. The race doesn't end when the sun catches up to the moon. The sun eventually catches up to the moon and totally eats it. And right, this is like always the tale that they say for the Native American stuff. It's like the moon is being eaten by the sun. But then what happens is the race doesn't end. The sun keeps going faster. But now, since the sun has now passed the moon starts to grow again. And that's how it works. That's how the cycles work. So let's just read these things. As the sun catches up to the moon wanes. Yep. Once the sun fully catches up, you have a new moon. No moon visible. And then finally, after the sun laps the moon or passes the moon in the sky, it'll start to wax until the next full moon, until the distance between the two is as big as it can be. And now it's going to start getting smaller, and it's going to start eating away again. So I just want to do some examples, starting with, this is at moonrise. And you could draw these pictures for different times of day, but I just wanted to focus on the moon because this is talking about the moon. But just drawing these images, it made me think of, this is probably the whole yin-yang stuff is getting at this idea. It's this balance between the moon and the sun that explains a lot of how the heavens work, and it's the time. This is how we're supposed to keep track of time. It's a way that God gave us to keep track of time and seasons. Okay, so the full moon rises after the sun sets. And so think of now a bunch of days are passing, but the sun is traveling a little bit faster through the sky. So now, as a few days have passed, the moon is rising, but the sun has set even sooner. So what would this mean? This is like the moon keeps rising later and later, and it starts to get eaten away. Like here, as the moon keeps getting eaten away, the sun is catching up to it. So when you have something like 4, like what is number 4? It's a crescent waning moon. And see, that's like a moon that it rises really late in the night. The sun is almost coming back up.
And this is always how it is. If you have a waning crescent moon, it's always this type of moon. It's always a moon that's coming up really late, just before the sun comes up. And it gets smaller and smaller. So if you want to see a really small crescent moon, it's going to be very close to the sun in the sky, either in front of it or behind it. Whether it's in front of it, it's going to tell you if that would be getting smaller, a waning moon, and if the moon is behind it, it's a waxing moon. It's getting bigger. So number 6, the sun has fully caught up to the moon, and that's why you can't see it. It's been totally eaten away. And so what happens if you keep going? So this type of moon, this is a hard moon to see, number 7, but today the moon is so bright, Isaiah prophecy, it's just way easier to see the moon in general. But a small crescent that's getting bigger, waxing, you'll only see it for a brief moment after the sun has set. But then it gets bigger and bigger, and its distance gets bigger and bigger away from the sun. Until you go back to the full moon. And the cycle just keeps repeating itself. So there's just these two things. If a moon is waxing, it's getting bigger. Well, since the sun moves a little bit faster, then the moon has to be behind the sun in the sky. And it's not yet opposite the sun. If the moon is waning, well, that means that it's getting smaller. So that means that the sun has to be catching up to the moon. So the moon is in front of the sun in the sky, and the sun is catching up. And I have these two examples. If you want to pause it and give yourself a little test, see if you're following along, you could do that right now. I'm going to show the solutions really quick after I read them. A nearly full waxing moon. So just nearly full, you just know, okay, the moon is almost opposite the sun in the sky. It's waxing, so it's getting bigger. That's just the one where, I don't know, if you're not thinking too carefully about it, you can mess it up. It's waxing, so it's getting bigger. That means that the moon is lagging behind the sun, and the distance is going to get bigger. So it's not quite. I mean, I'll show you a picture. It's kind of hard to explain sometimes. A small crescent, so that means it's really close to the sun. If you have a small crescent, and it's waning, so it's like the sun is about to eat it up. In the second example, a small crescent waning moon, it must be just barely in front of the sun. Let's see if my pictures look like that. Yeah, I think that's it. And I mean, that's mostly it for the lesson. Really just observe it for yourself. It just comes from those two ideas. You have a full moon when they're totally opposite in the sky, and how full it is has to do with the distance. As it gets closer, it gets eaten up. And the sun goes faster. The sun is the faster one. Here are 2 Bible verses that are relevant. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years." NASA Outer Space Fantasyland would not work like reality works, like real life works. When you go outside and you look at the stars have never changed their course. We have the same constellations that have ever been there, and they look the exact same. There's no parallax. There is no stellar parallax, because Outer Space Fantasyland is a bunch of BS. And God gave it, it's the time, we don't need watches. There's a reason that Masons are obsessed with watches. We don't need them. God gave us everything that we need, and it's just that people live in a TV reality. Nobody goes outside. If you just walked up and asked people, hey, what phase is the moon right now? People are going to think you're crazy, unless they're into astrology or something. But that just shows you how Satan corrupts. Practically the only people out there that are interacting with God's creation correctly, knowing where the sun and the stars and the moon are, paying attention to those things, the only people doing that in 2019, practically, are satanic people that are into witchcraft. There's almost nobody out there that just loves God and they want to understand his creation, and so that's why they're going and trying to figure this stuff out. And it's because we're under a great illusion. This is the next one. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. And this just always reminds me of how I used to think I was smarty McSmartpants for spending so much time and energy studying things that aren't even real. It's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. I really am. If NASA Outer Space Fantasyland was true, they wouldn't have to draw you a bunch of cartoons all the time. They wouldn't have to do a bunch of CGI all the time. And it doesn't make sense. Just because they draw a little figure like this doesn't mean that that's how NASA Outer Space Land would work. And it was such a relief to when I finally knew that it was all fake. It was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. It didn't make sense. It's very chaotic. That's what they love. Order out of chaos. The moon is a light in the sky. That's not a rock. They tell you that the moon is allegedly as reflective as asphalt, and it's because they're mocking you. They like to tell you those stupid stories that don't even make sense because they don't care. They'll make you believe whatever. It makes them feel more powerful the more ridiculous stuff they can make you believe. Look at that. Where's the dark part? It's optical. It's a light. It's like a rainbow. And you know how rainbows are optical? Everyone gets their own rainbow. It's optical properties of the firmament. I'll show you in a second what I think this is. I think it's like a blown up image of something that's inside the firmament. I mean, look, why can't we see the dark part? It's because there's even this weird, like, see that light part on the right? How come we can see so much distance or so much, how come we can see so much detail on the moon, but we don't see any detail on a mountain in the distance? How does that work? Shouldn't a mountain be just as reflective as whatever the surface of the moon is? No, the moon is a light. The reason you can see so much detail is because you're seeing a projected image of something in the firmament. It's like a rainbow. It's going to be, and when I say that, doesn't that just totally make sense? They look the same because it's the same type of thing. It's some sort of hologram thing in the sky. They make fun of it too. They mock the truth. Oh, the moon is just a hologram. And yeah, it probably is. It's not a place you can land. It's not a rock in outer space land. Where's the detail on the mountains? So how far away really is the moon? I think it's a projected image. It's probably the same distance as a rainbow. How far away is a rainbow? This is what the moon is. Look at this. This flower petal in my microscope looks like an alien planet. I remember using microscopes and getting images like this sometimes, and it looks exactly like planets. That's probably what it is. It's some sort of optical thing. And look at how this does the same exact thing what the moon does. This is a phase. You're getting a phase of this flower petal. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. God bless everybody.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Holy shit, wow. First of all, you kept saying, where's the dark spots? Where's the dark spots? I don't know about you guys, but I seen the dark spots on the moon when you were showing it. You say it's just a light in the sky. Show me any other light source that you could see shadows on, you guys. Any of them, Hans. Show me any other light source that has shadows. I want to see them. Okay? So when you show me that, we'll talk. Okay? So then you also said, what else did you say? You said that it's a projection in the sky. Where's this projection monitor at? Where's the projector at? Is it in Antarctica where we're not allowed to go? Is it guarded by the NASA penguins, because I think we would see a one somewhere. We'd see the light shining up to project the moon on the sky, on the dome, the firmament. And as for the rose, the petal that somebody put at the end of their telescope, that was manipulated with the end of the telescope and the roundness of the telescope, edges of the telescope. Not hard to do. How are they doing that to our telescopes in our own possession when we look up in the sky? Hans, how are they doing that to our shit? What you say makes no sense. So now, since you come up with this whole theory on how the sun and the moon work, which I watched and I couldn't even understand a damn thing you were saying, because nothing you said is what I observed through the day or the night. So let's see what you think. Here's an all-day sun observation with a solar filter, the proper way to do a sun observation. And you'll notice, Hans, no change in size. If the sun was inside of a firmament 3,000 miles away, the size of the sun would change dramatically in both directions throughout the day. So I'm going to tell you, you've been destroyed, Hans. Anything else you want to say? Let me know. Have a good day.